Welcome into the Morning Grind podcast. We're going to talk to Justin Van Zuiden, as STL Cardinals. You know him better as that, of course. We'll get into his life as an accountant, how he works at as far as the DFS perspective as well. He's going to have to defend the STL, the Cardinals. They're known as the best fans in the world. Does he agree? And the burning question, what everybody wants to know, what is STL Cardinals, his favorite Leprechaun movie? I know you want to know. There's 8 movies to pick from. Let's see what he says. Also want to mention we partnered with DraftKings. There is the qualifying fantasy golf millionaire contest that starts Thursday, June 11th. Users can compete for the $1 million top prize. The winner will also be awarded with a ticket for free entry into the Fantasy Tournament of Champions Final. The Fantasy Tournament of Champions Final that will be held during the big game in Tampa, where users will compete for another $1 million top prize. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details. With that, let's talk the cards. Welcome back to the Morning Grind. Dean, once again back with you, filling in for Stevie. Of course, Stevie is knocking out his NASCAR content. If you guys want NASCAR content, you know where to find it here on RotoGrinders.com. Yesterday we did I forgot which day is which. Yesterday was Blender. The day before that, we actually did some MMA content. We were talking about the upcoming MMA $1 million contest on DK. Today, with the lack of sports, we are shifting back once again to our Dfs Personality Showcase. Of course, you can find all these that we've done so far: Head Chopper, Randy Means, Kevin Roth, Fast Eddie Fear, Blender yesterday, Grant Neefer. I'm sure I'm missing some, but it's a whole catalog. You guys can check those out on the podcast feed, or just fire them up the old YouTube as well if you want to see our beautiful radio faces. That said, speaking of NASCAR, let's bring in new NASCAR experts. You know him from every other sport, so why not dominate NASCAR as well? Justin Van Zuiden, you know him better as STLCardinals84. Cards, you've been crushing those NASCAR streets, I hear.
Yeah, a couple good weeks. Might as well, give it a whirl with not much else going on. So I will say that I find the NASCAR sweat to be absolutely brutal because it seems like nothing matters until the end of the race, and there's always a wreck right at the end of the race, which swings everything. So I prefer the sweats that sort of build up over the course of the event, like, baseball does, and golf and so forth. And the whole, the first 80% of the race, you can't win anything, but you can lose it. And I don't know, a little bit too much fluctuation at the end in NASCAR for me, but that's just the nature of the sport. So can't argue with the results the last couple times. So I'll say, hey, the process must be, perfect.
Yeah, I see you finished first in the $12 on May 31st, 2020. Let's see. And that was probably with a bunch of other people, I imagine.
Yeah, that was
right?
with about 55 of my closest friends. So, there was a couple of tournaments. I think one was 100K to first and one was 200K to first. And I walked away with 2 GPP wins for like $8,000.
Nice.
So, it's maybe I'm a little too chalky, and you want to try to go a little contrarian to win when the chalk builds don't hit. I don't know. I'm too much of a NASCAR fish to be able to understand all the nuances of the lineup building. But hey, the 2 wins, even though they were split with a lot of folks, is better than walking away with less than what you started with. So on that note, I'll take it.
You're a rich NASCAR fish. That's all that matters, I suppose.
All I know is that that's going in my RotoGrinders profile as a first place finish out of however many thousands. So I can screenshot that whenever I need to and say, hey, look, I won this thing that says 200K to first next to it. But that's small details.
I know very little about NASCAR, and I've dabbled in it like you. Not that.
Well, what they do is they drive in a circle and they turn left. That's what they do.
That's it. I know that much.
There's a little bit more strategy involved. That's the general process.
But yeah, I when I'm watching, I'm one of those people that likes to kind of sort of, I don't obsess over it, but I like to keep an eye on what my currently winning is. I'll check it every so often. But like you said, it's basically
pointless in NASCAR.
What's the point? It's like, well, wait a second. I'm up like $2,000. Now I'm down to 500. Or what just happened in the last second? And I'm not watching the race. I can't watch NASCAR. I'm sorry. I mean, you gotta draw the line somewhere. Do you actually watch it? Is this something you've enjoyed, like as a spectator, just in general?
No, I mean, I can watch like the last 50 laps of a race or something, or like the last half hour, 45 minutes, particularly now. I mean, there's not a whole lot else competing for airtime in terms of sports. But yeah, the whole race for 3-4 hours, I generally can't do that. So it's an acquired, just like I mean, there's a lot of people that can't sit down and watch a baseball game for 3 hours. Of course, nobody is right now, but
Yeah.
I can sit and watch baseball all day, but there's a lot of people that, hey, I only watch the end of the game, or I only watch the playoffs, or, something like that. So everybody's got their own different tastes, but yeah, sitting and watching the whole NASCAR race for 3-4 hours is a little much for me anyway.
I always love the people that say how boring baseball is, and they talk about how amazing football is. And it's like, all right, let's hand the ball off to this guy. He's going to go like 1 or 2 yards, and we're going to wait like 35 seconds or so. And guess what? We're going to do that same exact thing again. But baseball was boring. And the actual like action in football, when you actually, knock it down out of 3 hours, is what, 10 minutes of actual in-game play? I'm not here to take shots at football, but it's just sort of a weird take that, like, depending on what the brand, certain
Right.
teams are more exciting, and certain. You're a big college ball fan as well too. Like, give me like 5 wide all day long. Give me some June Jones in my life. Has somebody hired him since the XFL? Because I want him coaching somewhere.
It's good for DFS, that's for sure. You know what? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think.
Probably at college. He was at Hawaii forever, right?
Yeah, he was, and then SMU before the XFL. I'm just trying to Google quick. I don't think he has been hired anywhere yet, but yeah, he's a very DFS friendly head coach, no matter where he lands. And tough break there for the XFL in their first year. I laughed at this because I don't. What was your stance? I can't believe we're taking this the XFL route, but we are. What was your stance when the XFL first started? Like, did you watch the first week? Did you never really get into it? Did you play DFS with it?
Yeah, you're talking about the
new XFL.
Second version. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, not the He Hate Me XFL. Gotcha.
No.
I watched some of the first week. I watched here and there. I didn't sit there and watch the entire game. I did play some DFS. I appreciated some of the presentation. I thought some of it was ambitious. The idea of like the sideline interviews, I think is interesting. I would love to see the NFL adopt that and just throw a microphone in Bill Belichick's face to see what he would say. And like after like a fourth down gone wrong or something like that, it'd be wild. And of course, the original XFL, I know it's like a joke, but they came up with the Sky Cam. Like they did innovate the NFL to some degree. And as far as the kickoff, the NFL is probably going to steal that at some point. Maybe not the first year, so it doesn't look like completely obvious. Quarterback play is super important, and their quarterbacks were not, outside of a couple dudes, their quarterbacks were not very good, and that is integral for a good product, I think. It was fine. It was okay. And I think I know you're going with this. I jumped down your Twitter feed, and I believe you were basically saying, like, everybody loved it the first week, saying it was an amazing product, and you were kind of taking the second week, saying, hey, you guys still love this? You guys still watching this?
The first week, no, everybody's talking, oh my goodness, this is such a great compliment to the NFL, and this is going to be awesome to have at this time of year where there's a void in the sports world. And then like 2 weeks later, nope, nobody's talking about it. Like the games are going on and everyone's talking about, what the hot stove baseball reports are, or NFL draft that's 4 months away. And it's, it's one of those things that the novelty kind of wears off. And when you realize, the quality of play just isn't what you're used to. You mentioned the quarterbacks, and there was a lot of games that were like 10-6, or, I mean, it was just brutal. I think the overs were like 25% hitting those first 3 or 4 weeks. And then, I think it could have been a sustainable product, and maybe it, the fan base levels off after a few years. But then, the COVID outbreak hit, and it was just a really tough break for the XFL trying to get it going for a second time. And then they pretty much, instantly folded. That surprised me a little bit. It seemed like McMahon was going to be in it for the long haul, or at least a longer haul the second time, to pull the plug, even more quickly than you did the first time. That was a little bit of a surprise to me, but I guess if you're going to take your L, you might as well take it before you eat too much money. So then, it came and went about as fast as anyone expected.
Yeah, I mean, again, I like some of the innovations. It was a faster clock as well too. And the game was faster too, for what it's worth, as far as the totals. And I love the fact that it was at ESPN or ABC. I know it's the same company, but whoever was broadcasting some of the games, they would put the total right there on the screen and embracing gambling. And I think that's for so long. I mean, I always sort of liked when Al Michaels would kind of wink at the audience and like say, "Oh, this extra point means something. I know the score is 37-12, but this extra point matters to those people in the desert." I combined him and Brett Musburger for some reason, but you know what I'm talking about. And there's a reason why we have these awful Jaguar games on Thursday night or Maction. Like, it's gambling. Let's just be honest about it, right, Cards?
It is. And, with more and more states taking that path, outside of Illinois managing to screw it up around every turn. And that,
as of yesterday.
Yeah, this grind. Illinois can't get out of their own way with anything. And you've got a state that's as broke as any state in the country. I mean, Illinois and California are both right up there. We've got ridiculous state pension plans for government employees that they're having trouble funding. And you've got a state that basically needs any revenue source that they can get. So you've got this immense, vast revenue source that you're seeing in New Jersey, you're seeing in Pennsylvania, you're seeing sports gambling bring in droves of money for these states that got in on the ground floor. And Illinois finally passed a law around the first of the year, legalizing sports betting. But because this was so political, this went on for a couple of years. Rivers Casino, one of the deep-pocketed casinos up there in Chicago, was basically, banging their fist against sports betting being legalized, because obviously they think it'll take money away from their brick-and-mortar casinos, slot machines, card games, what have you. And they are a very heavy political donor to a lot of the representatives for the state of Illinois. So the state had a hard time getting a gambling bill passed because so many of the legislators were basically in the pockets of Rivers Casino. And so Rivers Casino finally, essentially came to an agreement with a lot of these legislators. Hey, you can vote for a sports betting bill, but there has to be a provision in the bill that there's no in-person, or there's no online only sports betting for 18 months. So what that would do is that would give the brick and mortar casinos like Rivers Casino an 18-month head start on FanDuel, DraftKings, and whatever online operators might pop up. And so the bill got passed, and it finally went live to where they would start accepting the brick and mortar applications on March 1st. Well, March 1st comes, and 10 days later, the entire sports world shuts down. And now you've got no sports betting revenue because you're not allowing any online betting. It's only in-person only, and nobody can go anywhere in person to bet. So from March through June, Illinois has no sports betting revenue coming in because they wouldn't allow any online licenses. They would allow online licenses. You look at what these states have done with NASCAR, with MMA. I mean, they're breaking records for sports betting handle. Yeah. Stocks are going through the roof in the gambling sector, and Illinois got no money coming in. So they've botched this from the start, all because of this, the deep pockets and Rivers Casino. And now, just yesterday or Thursday or sometime this week, Governor Pritzker came out and said that right now you still can't do any in-person betting, which is the only form of betting that's allowed right now because you can't do it online with that 18-month rule. Yeah. And so basically it's still disallowed in Illinois, despite the fact that we're almost a half a year since the bill has passed. Again, it's just been botched up so many ways. I have heard rumors of FanDuel and DraftKings perhaps partnering with a brick and mortar casino in some capacity to be able to get that, because you can offer online betting whenever it gets back up and going again, if you have a brick and mortar presence. So if they partner with a brick and mortar casino that has a license, FanDuel and DraftKings could probably offer an online platform, before that 18-month period is up. Who knows? There's so much political that's gone on in that. But the fact of the matter is Illinois has already shot themselves in the foot with all this revenue that they could have brought in when the state is already broke and raising taxes. And it's disappointing. I mean, and not just because I'm a gambler, but you want to see your state get out of the hole and be able to fund these retirement plans that the employees are getting, and not raise your taxes and your property taxes and all those things, and they can't get out of their own way.
Yeah, I'm in Tennessee, and Tennessee is a similar thing. Is well, to some degree, what is it? At least a year ago, I want to say, where they actually passed sports gambling, but it's still all caught up in bureaucracy. You can't make any you can't wager anything just yet, and they're saying soon, eventually, at some point. And the other part of it
So
is
there's no anything in Tennessee right now either. No in person, no
no,
online, no nothing.
no, but it was passed. I want to say at least a year ago. Like it was
Yeah, it
passed. Like the
feels like it was at 9 months or 12 months ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe it's 9 months, maybe it's 15 months. How time is. Like, who knows? But I don't know what day today is. I have no clue.
Yeah, especially now. The last 3 months have just been a blob of days. And I read an article on that, by the way. Your perception of time is extremely distorted right now because of the lack of monumental things like milestones. And maybe this last week will be a little bit different just because of all the turmoil in the country and things like that. So we've got some memory of, hey, the start of June. But March through May, it's like there's no national champion in March Madness. There's no start of baseball season. There's no, if your life is so interconnected to sports, there's been no milestones in the last 3 months to where you can put a time frame on a big memory of sorts. There hasn't been a lot of weddings or any big personal gatherings, parties and vacations, and like that's why these last 3 months just feel like a blur to everybody. It was a really interesting kind of thought piece article. That
How long ago was Tiger King? I don't know. It could have been a week ago.
Yeah, it could have been 4 weeks ago. Who knows?
It could have been 3 months. The murder hornet. I think the murder hornets are gone. I'm not sure. They saw it just scrammed.
They came and went. Yeah.
So you mentioned Illinois. Are you born and raised in Illinois?
Yeah. Migrated about 25 miles or so from the town where I grew up, but northwestern Illinois, small town, about 10,000 people, and the town we live in now is about 16,000. So it's we're rural and outside the big city for sure. And I don't know. I've just never been a big city person. I don't mind traveling to a big city and going on a vacation there, but the day to day, you see people that work in Chicago, and the traffic that you have to deal with on a daily basis and the commute and all that. It's just not for me. So if we're going to be in Illinois, I'd rather be out in the country a little bit where you get a little bit more of a laid back approach and not quite as much traffic and bustle and crowds.
I was saying this the other day to you in a Slack. You're the most famous person in your city. I think.
I have
had a celebrity that's come from your city.
No, I don't. Although I did go to the same high school as Jake Junis.
Okay. Oh, there you go.
So he probably trumps me there, though he no longer lives here. But he was a dominant pitcher in high school, obviously. Rural Illinois, and he made it to the major leagues. So nice to see him, succeed and have kind of a nice career as a kind of middle of the pack starter there in the big leagues. But a few times I've had a person stop me at Walmart, did like a double take, and then finally, I guess, had the guts to I had an RG shirt on, I think.
Okay.
So he did a double take and then had the courage to say, Justin, yeah. And of course, it's always the worst because you have no idea who this other person is. They know you from seeing your face on camera and stuff. But anyway, it turns out that another DFS player that lives in the same town, and we followed each other on Twitter, and we chat every now and again. And then I had a person come up to me at work at my CPA job and said, my brother thinks you're just I can't believe that there's somebody from Sterling, Illinois that's one of the faces of DFS. And she goes, I have no idea what he's talking about, but he thinks you're kind of a big deal. And I didn't know what to say because this is a coworker.
Yes, I'm a big deal. I'm STLCardinals84, damn it.
So this is a coworker at the CPA job, and I'm pretty particular about keeping my CPA life, separate, just because it's awkward. It's a different world, obviously. But not that I don't talk about it with people who know and that, but when it's just somebody out of the blue, and so I had no idea what to say. I just try to brush it off like it's no big deal, and she's like, no, he really thinks you're you're the big deal. And I go, do you want me to sign a piece of paper here? Or what do you want me to do?
Keep grinding, STL cards.
She laughed. So that, there's maybe one other interaction somewhere, but so that's three, I guess, three people in the course of about 6 or 7 years.
Well, of course, at like RG parties and like DFS functions, I'm sure people come up to you and
right. Like those people that interact with you on Twitter and stuff. But just in terms of random encounters, like there was those two, and then a third person one year when we were in St. Louis that was dead convinced that I was Tobey Maguire, and it was really awkward. That was probably oh shoot.
I can see it. I can see it like a vague similarity.
That was probably, so that probably would have been like 2007. I don't think I was married yet. So that'd have been like 13 years ago. So I would have been 23 at the time, and he's like 7 years older than me. So he would have been about 30.
He just saw Spider-Man.
Yeah, it was right around when one of the Spider-Man movies was released. And I was like, no, I'm not. And this girl says, you're just saying that because you don't want to draw. I'm like, no, I'm not. So that was, that was my only other claim to fame. I guess maybe I should have taken that and run with it and tried to,
try be a stunt double.
But it was really odd. It was really odd because my wife was with me. We weren't married yet. And I can't remember whether
Mary Jane, you mean? Is that what you're talking about?
So, and we were I think it was when we were at like the Anheuser-Busch plant, and I think we were doing the tour. So maybe she had a few beverages before she saw me. And
she had beer goggles on.
Well, yeah. You take the 3 and you move it up to a 9 or whatever. Every beer bumps you up by 1. So, yeah, that was it. I can't think of any more awkward personal encounters or anybody else coming up to me, but I don't know. It's kind of fun to get some recognition every now and again.
So you mentioned the accounting job, and I always thought this was wild. I always found it fascinating. I don't know how you do it. You have a wife, you have kids, you grind like every single sport. Now NASCAR, but I imagine you'll fall back on NASCAR to some degree.
Right.
But all the other sports come back, and how do you, and you pump out content? You're on air. You're doing different videos. You're doing articles. How do you? And you have a full-time accounting job. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, it's been a lot easier the last 3 months because there hasn't been much on the RG side to do with the sports world shut down. So, I'm probably one of the best people, at least that I know, in terms of managing my time, because I almost have to be. Otherwise, you're not going to get through it if you're trying to do maybe a little bit more than what you should be, which at the busiest, I probably am, committing to maybe a little bit more than I should for my own sanity. But I will usually have my day planned out when it starts. Here's what I need to get done today. Here's what I have to do for RotoGrinders today. And if it's, if I got to get up an hour earlier than usual, I'll get up an hour earlier than usual to do.
What's that? What's an hour earlier than usual? Like 7?
I'm usually up at 6:30. So 5:30 would be an hour earlier. I usually go to bed about 10:30. So, you're still getting about 7 hours of sleep there. If you're getting up at 5:30, and so, from 5:30 to 7, I can knock out my surveys or rankings or, a little article or whatever needs to be done on the RG side. Or you can do it, the night before and sleep in a little bit. But, then that way you can get to the day job at 8 and do the 8 to 5 and then come home. And, that works out well with lock time in the evenings, that you can still set lineups in the hour leading up to lineup lock, which you almost have to be around for MLB lineups or NBA late scratches or, things of that nature. And obviously football's on the weekend. So the schedule ends up kind of working itself out because, the CPA job is probably the slowest in like October, November. That's probably our slowest time of the year, which is obviously one of the biggest times for sports because you got NFL going on, you've got golf, you've got basketball generally starting around that time frame. And then the busy time with me being a tax accountant is February, March, and April, which February, basketball is heading towards the playoffs, football's done, baseball starts up in April. And so basically, I'm only working with maybe one sport, February, March, and April. And I do a lot more of my content. RotoGrinders has been nice enough to work with my schedule throughout the years to where, maybe my schedule is a little bit more shifted towards doing some RG work on the weekends, filling in for Meansy or filling in for Cheese on the weekends. And so, it's basically just planning out your days and planning out, your time. And my wife doesn't work, so she stays home and is able to do a lot more with the kids and helping out around the house. So, couldn't do that without her helping out too. And it works out, and it takes some planning and thought and some motivation to, keep on schedule every day.
Yeah, a couple things. Well, you mentioned making lineups and having to be around for your making lineups and all the way up the lock. And does the wife, do the kids know? Like, do you like go off into an office? Do you have like a man cave when it's like 6:30 East Coast, 30 minutes left until time? And I assume that adjusts dinner time and things that as well. How do they work around? How does the whole house work around the schedule of like, I have to make lineups right now, I'll talk to you in 26 minutes?
Right. So, our life it tends to work in this capacity because my wife has a medical condition and not bad, but she was born with a mild case of cerebral palsy, which has given her just a little bit of altered feeling in the right side of her body. So it is uncomfortable for her to drive simply because she doesn't have as much feeling in the right side of her body. So, most people gas and brake with their right foot, and it's pretty hard to drive without having really working at it, without accessing your right foot. So she doesn't by choice, not that she couldn't, but she just doesn't want to put people at risk and all that. She generally doesn't drive. And so during the day when I'm at work, how we handle it most of the time is her mother is still in town, and we'll usually come over and get the kids and get her if they need to run errands or get some lunch or whatever the case may be, kind of around like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So most of the time my wife and kids will eat lunch a little bit later in the day. So whether that's 1:30, 2 o'clock, they're eating lunch, and I'm kind of even when I'm working, a lot of times I won't eat until like 1 o'clock as well. So we're kind of naturally on that schedule where we eat lunch and dinner a little bit later. And with me being in the central time zone, lock time is usually at 6. So then we can eat dinner and stuff after that. And it works out, it works out pretty well in terms of getting that schedule worked. And I'm in the basement usually, whenever I'm doing a show right now, doing this interview, I'm in the basement. So the kids can still be wild upstairs or what have you. And I can still make lineups, and they kind of know whenever I'm downstairs, I'm generally doing something, important with work or DFS or something. And yeah, I'm going to have to need to remember, how to get back in that routine again when we get the 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock lock times back for some of these major sports, but I'm ready for it.
How are the kids doing for during the quarantine in the last 3 months or so? Or is school, I think, I guess depends upon the state. My understanding, most of them just basically homeschooling. In some places, it's over. Have you had to learn how to do certain subjects? You're dusting off on geography and things like that?
Yeah. So our oldest is advanced math curriculum. I guess I had no idea where he gets the math knowledge, but so he was in 4th grade last year. He's moving into 5th grade now, and obviously the quarantine was at the end of the school year, so he was kind of starting to get into 5th grade stuff. But a lot of this stuff was not math that they had taught in the classroom throughout the year. So they're doing, it's like it was an online curriculum where it shows you a video. So it shows you the concepts, and then it goes back and quizzes you on the various concepts. Well, when you haven't seen these in action and worked with them in the classroom, it's a little bit hard for somebody that's 9 or 10 years old to retain it all. And so there was a few lessons that I went up and helped him with, and the video starts and I'm kind of watching it with him, and I'm like, oh no, it has been 20 years since I have worked with a rhombus.
You're an accountant. You're accountable for all things numbers. You should know.
I know, but I am not an engineer. There's a difference between accounting and engineering. And so he's dealing with rhombus and parallelograms and all these things that we've got a virtual protractor on the screen. And I'm like, oh boy, this is going to be a little bit of a struggle. It's been a long time since I've worked with a rhombus or a parallelogram. And we got through it. And I looked at him, I said, are you planning to be an engineer? And he said, no. And I said, you'll probably never use this again. But, it's going to be tough because a lot of the stuff that they've learned over the end of the school year, retaining it when the new school year starts is going to be difficult. So they're probably going to have to do a little bit more review at the beginning of the next school year. But who knows if that's going to be, in person or if that's still going to be remote. But I do have a newfound appreciation for teachers that, you've got 24 kids in a class or 20 kids or 26 kids or what have you, running around with different needs and different social behaviors, and trying to, to work with them and keep everybody learning on the same path, over the course of a day. It's difficult. And you can see that just trying to work from home with two. And they made it through the end of the year. I think they're happy to have a little bit of a break now, and I'm definitely happy to have a little bit of a break now. But they're doing okay. It's summer, at least they can get outside now and do a few things. But no vacations, no swim trips or anything like that. That's been a little bit tough on them. We were supposed to go to St. Louis about a week ago. Had tickets for them to see their first game at Busch Stadium down there, which obviously didn't happen. So that was a little bit of a bummer, but all things considered on a relative scale, none of us have gotten sick. We're all doing pretty good.
Cards, this isn't about me, but in another life, not too long ago, 10 years, whatever it is, maybe I was a teacher. So I retroactively appreciate your newfound appreciation.
Well, thank you, Dean, for your service.
Yes. And I use teacher as a very liberal term. I was a pool sub, but I was qualified to teach, and I was getting flashbacks. Never mind me as far as teaching. What is I thought you were gonna have a hot take as far as what's the real controversial way that people are doing math now, where it's like half the side are on one, half the side on the other? Do you know what I'm talking about? How
it's a
new format.
It's a common core. The new Common Core math basically revolves into breaking things down into tens. So if I take, instead of 13 times 3, right, 13 times 3 and long multiplying it out to get 39, they break it down into powers of 10. So they break it down into 10 times 3, right? 10 times 3 is 30. And then the 3 times 3 is 9. And then you add those numbers together to get 39. It adds an extra step in most people's minds because you're splitting it out and doing 2 steps and then adding. I don't like it, but okay. I think it's just a function of, it's because old man yells at cloud and I learned it the other way.
It's new and you're not used to it.
Because I learned it the other way, I'm not used to it. And so you're not going to get a whole lot of people that are like 35 and above that are probably going to agree with that curriculum outside of and some of the teachers in that age range don't like it either. But I understand the logic, seeing my kid work through it, that when you can break things down into tens, it's a lot easier to grasp. And they can probably get to the answer just as fast doing it the quote unquote new way. Again, inherently, I don't like it because that's not the way I learned it, but I understand the logic behind it. So I'm not gonna go off the rails against it or anything like that, but it does make it a little more difficult to teach them some concepts and the way that they're going to need to do it in school versus trying to take the shortcut and here's my way, which if I do that with the kids, then that's going to confuse them when they go back to the classroom and try to do it. So yeah, I don't like it because that's not the way I learned it, but I don't necessarily think the logic behind it is flawed. And I think the people that say, oh, what is 4 steps is now 60 steps. I mean, that's an exaggeration. And in reality, once you get the hang of the new method, those multiple steps do go by pretty quickly and you can get the answer in pretty much the same amount of time.
Why accounting? Did you always want to be an accountant or you just kind of found it in college?
So when I was, this probably has to go back. My father is very fiscally responsible. And by that, I mean, when I was growing up, it was and we always took vacations and things like that, but like the household expenses were always, we buy the off-brand ketchup and the off-brand hamburger buns um and all that. So I learned fiscal responsibility from a young age, and I had a few jobs, odds and ends, doing some tutoring when I was in high school and things of that nature. And I started working at a retail store in town when I was 16. And so before I got out of high school and went to college, I had $3,000 saved up or something like that. And so for graduation, my dad says, I'll match whatever you save throughout high school. So I saved $3,000. He said, I'll match that. So I'll give you $6,000, and I'm going to take you to meet my stockbroker and open a brokerage account. And, we'll let them give you some ideas of what you want to, what you can do, but you can pick what you want to invest in. And I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, I'm 17 years old or whatever, and I've got $6,000 here, and I can decide what I want to invest it in. And so we went to a local stockbroker and picked out, a few stocks at the time, or whatever. And, they gave me a list of, hey, here's 10 or 12 stocks that we've got on our radar right now. Here's the industries that they're all in, what have you. So I invested in them and opened a brokerage account, $6,000 in my name. And every month or so I get a statement and check on how things were doing and kind of review where it was. And it was pretty cool. And so I developed an interest in, I was always really strong in math growing up.
And I hope you picked Apple and not Enron.
I did not invest in Enron. I'll tell you the stocks in a minute. I still own them. More of nostalgia than anything at this point. So I had an interest in math and finance from that time. And so I went to college, and I graduated at the top of my high school class. And so our high school had a program with the local community college that if you graduated in the top portion of your class, you can go to community college for free. And obviously, knowing my parents being fiscally responsible and having that upbringing myself, I could not bring myself to go to a 4-year college to get the same undergraduate courses and pay like 10 grand a year, compared to going to community college for free. After 2 years, you're going to end up with the same credits. Then you can transfer to a 4-year university. So I went to the community college and I said, I'm going to start taking business courses. I know I want something to do with business, whether it's finance, maybe I want to be a stockbroker myself or a trader on the floor or whatever. And so I was in an accounting course my freshman year in college. And this teacher, his name was Charles West at the community college, kind of, I had like 2 courses with him my first year. And him and I were just chatting one day, and he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I really like finance. I said, my dad's got me kind of into the stock market, and I kind of enjoy following the stock market and financial world and things like that. And he goes, if you get an accounting degree, you can do anything you want in the finance world. You can be an accountant if you want, or you can still use that degree and you can get involved in finance. You can work on the stock exchange. You can work, with a stockbroker. Basically, an accounting degree opens that door for you to be in finance if you want to. Whereas the finance degree, you're kind of stuck in that area. And if you decide you want to go into accounting, you're probably going to need more schooling to take it that far. So based on that advice, I went into the accounting side of it, took a few more accounting classes, enjoyed it. Got an internship when I was ended up going to NIU for my junior and senior years and my graduate degree, and got an internship with a CPA firm, between my sophomore and junior years. And that's the firm I'm working with today. So it was all that community college instructor kind of getting me on the accounting path. And it's a grind. I mean, I won't say that it's been easy, but it's I enjoy doing taxes and helping people and talking with clients and things of that nature, and not just being in an office crunching numbers all day. I've got a lot of people that I talk to and meet with, and that makes the days go by a lot faster. So as for the stocks, funny story, because they still exist at the same brokerage in the same portfolio, which I've added to. throughout the years. But I could not bring myself to sell those first two positions that I had, which I bought. So, again, I was 17 and now I'm 30, I'll be 36 in a week. So almost 20 years. So the two positions are, the first one is Kroger stock, which obviously, they're Midwestern based. I think they're based in Cincinnati, but grocer retailer, which has been one of the only stocks performing very well throughout the pandemic because everybody needs groceries. And the Kroger stock that I own is it's trading at $32 now. And after a few splits, I bought it for $10. So I'm up like 205% on my Kroger stock over the 20 years that I've had it. So that's a plus. The other holding is, okay, it was 1997 or 2000, somewhere. I guess it was closer to 2000. And my stockbroker and I had this discussion because cell phones were just coming out. I said, I want to get in on this cell phone thing, this technology deal. And I want to buy like a phone retailer. You could buy AT&T was the blue chip stock. And we talked about it and looked at some stuff and we settled on Sprint. And Sprint has been the only company over the course of the last 15 years that has seemingly botched every decision when it comes to mobile phones. Like, do you know anybody that has Sprint as their cell phone provider right now? I don't.
I don't. I mean, I don't. Yeah, I couldn't say.
So the Sprint stock has reverse split several times throughout the years. And so my cost basis in the shares that I bought of Sprint is like $70 and it's trading at $8 right now. I physically almost could not sell that because the commission on the sale would net me with basically nothing. So I'm more than double on my Kroger stock and I'm basically next to nothing on my Sprint. And so my $6,000 of investments back from my 17, 18-year-old days have basically washed out since then. I think with the Kroger being up so much, I may be up a bit as a whole. But those two positions are still there just as nostalgia more than anything. And I probably could sell the Kroger since it's up so much. I can't see that climbing a whole lot else, or a whole lot more. But, it's been interesting. DraftKings went public a month or so ago. That was a miss by me. DraftKings went public at like $19 a share. And I set a order to buy it at like 15. I figured there's no sports going on right now. How's DraftKings going to rise right away? It never got down to 15 and every gambling stock has just been flying over the last month. And I think DraftKings ended up getting up over $40 a share. So it's more than
like 44 or 43 the other day.
Yeah, I think it's down to like 39 or 40 today. It's come back just a bit, but I mean, it's more than doubled since its IPO. So congrats to those guys and everybody that got in on the ground floor there. Obviously, DraftKings has been an innovator in the sports betting space since they launched, and it's obviously paid off for them. And they've got a stock that's doing pretty well right now, and that's great for everybody that invested and all the founders and people that put hard work into that company. And I missed the boat on the bump there. So you win some, you lose some.
By the way, can you confirm this story? Grant has told me, Grant, of course, contributor here at RotoGrinders. Yep. His dad apparently is a star in the agricultural accounting community, and like you're a fan of his?
So I do taxes for a living, and I live in rural Illinois. So most of my clients are farmers. I mean, I work with a lot of farmers. The practice I inherited from the partner who retired when I was coming up. He had a lot of farmers, and that's kind of the space that I have taken. Not that I didn't grow up as a farmer. My dad worked on a farm for a few years. My grandpa owned a farm. And so I've got some knowledge of farming and a lot of clientele that are farmers. And Grant's dad, Paul, has been one of the leaders in the ag accounting community for a long time, works at a competing firm. But I read his stuff that gets published, and he's got to be getting close to retirement, I think, in a few years. But if you were a inspired CPA in the ag space, most people in that space would strive to be what Grant's dad is. And I don't know Grant on an interpersonal level enough, and I don't know his dad on an interpersonal level enough. Surely they have some characteristics that are the same, But when you see and talk to Grant and you see that he can chug a beer in 1.5 seconds, and you hear, you read the stuff that his dad publishes, which is about as dry a content, no offense, I mean, I'm in the same space, but if you're not in the space, reading about corn and soybeans and agriculture loans is not the most inspiring content to read from an outsider's perspective. And you see that that's the stuff that Grant's dad does. I mean, they seem worlds apart on the surface. So I'm really curious to see, if I had a day to sit down and chat with Grant and his dad together, like, what are the three things you most have in common? Because it seems like your day-to-day lives are so much different. And obviously everybody has that path with their parents, and surely there's ties somewhere, but it's pretty fascinating that, when I saw Grant for the first time, I'm like, your last name, like, do you know Paul? That's my dad. I'm like, no way. And that we talked about that the last time when we were down in Nashville. We were in an Uber when we had this this revelation. So it was pretty cool. It's a small world. It's fascinating.
I'm gonna humble brag here. I'm gonna get you all jealous. I actually had dinner with Grant and his father, not just the three of us.
Okay.
Group.
Are there things in common? Like,
Well, I know his father reads a lot. Like, he's a big reader, and like, so that it sort of makes sense to kind of. And Grant's, of course, more the talker, and I think Grant is somebody that kind of opened up more like later in life. He was probably a quiet kid. I feel like I talked to him about this, but he's obviously gone the other way on that. But yeah, his father seemed like a perfectly nice guy. And he goes to bed like at 8 or 9 o'clock. Like, we talked about that. It was really early. And he just reads a ton. He's super smart. So it all sort of checks out.
He is super sharp. I mean, I admire and I am proud of what I've been able to accomplish as a CPA in the agriculture space. But I'm a tenth of what his dad is in terms of my knowledge. And obviously, he's got about 20 extra years or 30 extra years of experience on me at this point. But smart guy. We've even had we've reached out to him with some questions on various things, and he's responded and given us some guidance, and it seems like a great guy. And again, I haven't met him, but read his stuff for years, and it's a primary example of just everybody's 7 degrees from Kevin Bacon or what have you. It's pretty crazy.
6, but nobody's counting. We get new person cards. I don't know who the new person's going to be. We have to replace Kevin Bacon. He hasn't been doing as many movies. That's probably a conversation for another podcast. But I don't know. John C. Reilly appears in a lot of things. But let's talk about some of your favorite sports teams. Why are the St. Louis Cardinal fans the greatest baseball fans of all time? Why is that the greatest fan base?
I don't know. I feel like it's
defend them.
I feel like I'm not going to defend it. Are you familiar with the Best Fans in Baseball Twitter account?
Yeah. Well, I think it retweets all the terrible things that Cardinals fans say. Yeah.
So look, I'm going to say one thing is that if you dedicated a Twitter account to tweet out the worst from any fan base, it's going to be just as bad as what the awful Cardinal fans are, right? The awful Yankee takes and the awful Cubs takes. And all that, if Felix PA is going to be a superstar, retweet that from a Cubs fan account.
That's a deep cut, Felix PA.
10% of the people listening to this will know the Felix PA reference. You got to go back about 20 years for that. But so the Best Fans in Baseball Twitter account, it's cool. It's a parody. All the parody accounts are fun. But you could do that with fans of any team. It means that you have fans, right? Maybe the Marlins can't. You can't have one because they don't.
It wouldn't be as funny to do it like against Islanders fans,
right?
Like
yeah,
it's not the same. I'm sure they're just as dumb.
But you haven't won anything, and you gotta envy. Winning breeds envy. So I think it's a little bit of a stereotype. I was at the game where Tony Gwynn, I think he got like his 2,998th hit in St. Louis or something like that. He was right around 3,000 hits, and he got like a standing ovation. Yeah. And the fans in St. Louis are generally just polite, and it is what it is. Cubs Cardinals games, we've been to tons of them. I haven't ever really seen any hostility other than maybe people on each side that have had a few too many adult beverages. that tends to throw the inhibitions out the window a little bit. But everything's generally polite when you go to a game down there, and I think some of the fans have embraced the, that title a little bit. And,
they're like a representative of it. They want to.
Yeah, I mean, some take it a little bit too far, but it's, if you've never been to the stadium, it's a great place to see a game. If we ever get a chance to see a game again, it's a great place to go see a game, and other things to do in the area. It's I'm obviously biased, but the new stadium is nice, and it's not. Did you ever have you seen any baseball games in St. Louis at any point?
No, I've been to like 16 or 17 ballparks around the country. I've done some road trips, and years ago I was in the area for a soccer tournament, actually playing soccer, and I had the choice of going to a baseball game just to see the old Busch Stadium, and there was a theme park. What's the theme park in the area? And I chose
the Six Flags.
That's where I went, I think. I don't know. I went to a theme park instead, but probably a poor choice. I probably should have went to the baseball game.
Well, so we have both of those planned for this year. I have a Six Flags season pass, which I don't think I'll ever get to use. They have said that if the park's closed all year, it'll be good for next year, or for at least a few months of next year. So we're going to go down there this year with the kids, see a ball game, go to Six Flags, and do both of those activities. But, the old Busch Stadium, obviously you probably know, it was an enclosed microwave. Right,
well, diamond cutter, right? The old school diamond cutter.
Yes, it was just a giant enclosed circular microwave of heat and AstroTurf, like all the worst combinations you can get. 110 degrees in the summer, AstroTurf, and this dome-like atmosphere with this giant cookie. And if you went to a day game in the summer, it was just hot. And I mean, it's always going to be hot in St. Louis in the summer. But the new stadium has an open air outfield. There's plenty of shade, you go to enough games, the best seats to get in the day games to where you're not in the sun. And, almost every night game is comfortable just because you don't have the AstroTurf anymore. You don't have the enclosed stadium. And, the atmosphere is always pretty positive. You can go root for the visiting team if you want to. And unless you're outrageous, you're not going to get heckled too much. And, I've probably been to 100 games. And
your favorite at the game moment as a sports fan doesn't have to be baseball. One sort of stand out for you. Were you at one of the World Series games by chance or no?
No. So my favorite at the game moment was, let's see, there was back-to-back years where they played the Dodgers in the NLCS, and I get them mixed up. So I want to make sure I get the right game here. So World Series have always said that we're going to go to a game, to a World Series game. And, 06, they won the World Series. It wasn't in a place at that point where we could go to a World Series game. I started my job in 07. I was just graduating from college. We weren't going to go to a World Series game in 06, but it was really cool seeing them win the World Series over Detroit in 06. So I said, if we have the financial means to do it, the next time the Cardinals make the World Series, we're going to go to a game. So 2011, they make the
World
Series.
Sell that Sprint stock if you need to.
Yeah, I net about $60
a few extra bucks.
So I said, the next time they make the World Series, we're going to go to a game. 2011, they make the World Series. Got to hold up to my promise. We got to go to a game. Well, our son, our oldest son, is like a year old at the time. And, my parents weren't around or whatever. We couldn't get a sitter for a couple days. And we've got a 1-year-old at home. Are you really going to leave him? You're not going to take him with you at that age to go to a World Series game at, $900 a ticket or what have you. So
would you have to buy him a seat? I don't know how that works.
I don't know the rules. And again, the kid at a ball game at that,
sure,
just screaming and things are going to happen. It wasn't going to happen. So against my better judgment, could have had tickets to World Series 2011 Game 6. Which was the David Freese game, which, would probably been the most, one of the most memorable World Series games in recent memory, even for non-fans of those two teams. Maybe not for the Texas side, but so really kicking
Nelson Cruz should have caught that ball, right?
Yes, he should have. I'd say 75% of the time he probably catches that ball. But
it's a weird thing that the history just forgets that. I don't know. Like, I don't want to say give
They
him crap.
scored two. Josh Hamilton hit a home run in extra innings. They got the lead in the 11th inning and gave it back again. A remarkable game.
Yeah. Go ahead. I cut you off.
No, that's all right.
Popped in my head as far as the cruise thing.
Yeah. So right. It's in my head from that moment. When the Cardinals make the World Series, we're going to go to a game. 2014, they make the World Series against the Red Sox, and they just got blasted in that series. And our youngest son was one at that time. And so we didn't go to a game in that World Series. And so now I've broken my own personal promise twice, right? We're going to go to a World Series game. So 2019, the Cardinals have that postseason series against the Braves. They get the 10 runs in the first inning. They make the NLCS.
Yes.
The moment the Cardinals make the NLCS, I'm making plans, man. We are going to a World Series game if they make it. Hell or high water, we're going to a World Series game. So it's like game one of the NLCS. And I'm messaging DB, hey, if the Cardinals make the World Series, man, we're going down to a game, and I might need this day off of Grinders Live or XM or whatever. And Dan's like, bro, the NLCS just started. They haven't even played a game yet. What are you doing? So I had to tell him, 3 times I have said, if the Cardinals make the World Series, we're going to a game, and I haven't planned for it in advance, and we haven't gone. So I am doing everything in my power to make the plans this time. If the Cardinals make the World Series, we're going to go. And I don't care if it's before game one of the NLCS. I'm letting you know that on October 18th and 19th, if the Cardinals are in the World Series, I'm not going to be able to do a show. And I don't miss, I don't miss shows. I'm a planner. I'm not going to leave people high and dry. So, I'm letting him know far too long in advance. And so he gave me some grief over it. Maybe a little less so once I explained the scenario.
Yeah.
And he goes, you totally just jinxed yourself. And then the Cardinals went and got absolutely swept by the Nationals in the NLCS. And so, no World Series game, no plans. And now he jostles me a little bit about it every now and again. It's all in good fun.
Pop quiz. I did some Googling here. I didn't
Yes.
cut you off. I apologize. But
Nope.
You mentioned Tony Gwynn. He faced Greg Maddux 107 times in his life. How many times did Greg Maddux strike him out?
Oof. Boy, Tony Gwynn never struck out. He probably had like a 10% strikeout rate, something like that. How many at bats?
107.
Let's go with 7.
Let's go with 0.
0 times?
Never struck out, and he batted
Wow.
415 against him.
Yeah, I was going to say a 400 average.
Yeah, and Maddux got every corner. Maddux had Eric Gregg's strike zone at all times.
I would have never guessed 0 Ks. So you asked me about my favorite in-person memory. So 2013, we did go to an NLCS game. And St. Louis is 4 hours away. And so, we had somebody watch the kids. Again, our youngest had just been born. And so this was the Dodgers in the NLCS. And game 1 was a 13-inning game. The Cardinals won on a walk-off. And so the next day we drove down there for game 2. It was a day game. It was like a 1 or 2 o'clock start, 3 o'clock start, something like that. It was about a 4-hour drive. So we just left at like 8 or 9 in the morning and went down for the day game. And so this game was game 2 of the 2015 NLCS, or 2013, sorry, I misspoke, 2013 NLCS. And this was when Michael Wacha was first coming up. And people don't remember this now, but when Michael Wacha first came into the league, like everyone thought he was going to be an ace. And he pitched like an ace, like his first year. And then he had some arm issues, and he's been dreadful ever since. But in game 2 of this NLCS, it was Wacha against Clayton Kershaw, and the Cardinals won 1-0. They only had 2 hits in the game. I just pulled up the box score. And Wacha outpitched Kershaw, and I think he pitched like 7 scoreless innings, struck out Yasiel Puig 3 times, and the Cardinals won 1-0. It was actually a very brisk game.
Yeah.
2 hours and 40 minutes, according to which you never see a playoff game under 3 hours. And so the game was done by, 5 or 6 o'clock. And then we drove home that night and got home at like 10 or 11. And so it was literally a day trip down to St. Louis for the LCS game and got back home that night. And I would not do that again. I was exhausted with 8 or 9 hours on the road and watching a playoff game. But like the atmosphere for a baseball, like an NLCS game or a World Series game, is so much different. Like people say this with the NHL too.
Oh yeah.
Like the playoff games, like 162 regular season games or 81 regular season games for NHL and NBA, like you don't get that type of playoff atmosphere in a regular season game in any sport other than maybe the NFL, because there's only 16 games and every regular season game is important. But the baseball playoff atmosphere is just so much different from a regular season game where, you know, from the jump, the pitches are more important. And so that was the best game I've seen in person. Still on the agenda to get to a World Series game, hopefully someday, before I can't make it there anymore. But, when it happens, I'll certainly be planning for it in advance again if they make the NLCS. But hopefully, if baseball doesn't fall off a cliff and everybody stops acting like petulant children, we can see the sport again at some point. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit worried about the future right now.
Yeah. Again, this is not about me, but it just kind of triggered my memory as far as, you mentioned the Marlins earlier. You took your shots at them, rightfully so, well deserved. Once upon a time, I was a Marlins fan, and in 2003, I caught they had a massive stadium. It was Joe Robbie Stadium at the time, Hard Rock Stadium now, wherever it's called, Hard Rock something, and like with 65,000 people. Miami is an event town. When there's an event going on, we're coming out. Like then all of a sudden we're interested. The regular season, who cares, whatever. But I saw the play. I don't remember when Conine threw out, who was a really, really slow guy for San Francisco, and Pudge Rodriguez held onto the ball. I don't remember that play. There was like a collision at the plate.
Yeah.
God, I can't remember who was running. Somebody super slow for the Giants. And then I saw the game where Miguel Cabrera hit the home run off of Roger Clemens when he's 19 years old. Roger Clemens
I remember that.
Back. And then Alex Gonzalez later in that game hit a walk-off homer in the World Series, which is like, I just got lucky.
So is that the most memorable? I was going to ask you, is that your most memorable in-person experience there?
How do you top that? Like World Series game, Miguel Cabrera, you see him, he gets brushed back by Clemens, bangs on a homer. Bangs on a homer off Clemens. At the time, it was supposed to be Roger Clemens' last game ever. And the Marlins fans, I know the Marlins fans aren't the best fans in the world, but they actually gave Clemens like a big standing ovation when he was coming off the mound. And then, of course, Alex Gonzalez hit a walk-off homer down the left field line off of one of the Weaver brothers. So, yeah, I don't really know how to top that. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, the Weaver, one of them might still be pitching. Who knows? They might still be able to get him out there tomorrow.
Taking advantage of that rock pile out there with the Angels. Story for another day, I suppose.
The marine layer helps. Knocks the fly balls down.
Got to get that in. Why the Ravens? Why are we a Ravens fan?
So, I was always a little deviant, apparently, growing up. The Cardinals thing is relatively easy to explain. I've got some family and friends and cousins that were Cardinal fans, and a good chunk of my family's Cardinal fans, and that's not that far away. I mean, I'm 2.5 hours from Chicago and 4 hours from St. Louis. It's pretty easy to explain. The Ravens thing is there's a lot more nuance to the Ravens thing, and it's a little bit weird. But so I was a kid growing up in the late 80s. I wasn't, if I would have been like at an impressionable age in 85 when the Bears won the Super Bowl, I'd probably be a Bears fan along with most of the other people in this area, but I was one in 85. So, my impressionable age was more like 89, 90. You start to throw football around, and the best quarterback in the Midwest, right? Not Joe Montana out in San Francisco or Dan Marino in Miami.
Jim Everett?
I'm in the what's that?
Jim Everett?
I mean, Jim Everett, there's nobody in the Midwest. So for whatever reason, watching football on TV, I took this liking to Bernie Kosar when I was like 6 or 7 years old.
Okay.
And back in the day, they had these like full outfits for kids where you could get like the helmets and the jersey. I forget who manufactured those. Somebody can let me know after they listen to this. But so I had the Browns helmet, and my parents got me the Kosar jersey, and so I was a Browns fan just because I liked Bernie, and they had a few years in there where they were good, right? They almost made the Super Bowl and lost to Denver, had a couple heartbreakers against Denver. And so I was a Browns fan, not a diehard by any means. Like, I have no emotional attachment to the city of Cleveland, obviously, for any reason. And so the Browns, up and moved to Baltimore, and everybody in Cleveland hates Art Modell because he moved the team to Baltimore. But again, I have no emotional attachment to the city of Cleveland. So like, well, same team. I'll be a fan of them. They moved to Baltimore. It's the same players that I know. And then the first year that the Ravens were out in Baltimore, we went out there on a summer trip and went to the training camp, and I got autographs. I still got Matt Stover's autograph hanging around somewhere.
The punter or the kicker?
The kicker, yeah. He was the kicker for like 20 years. and so we went to the training camp the first year they were out in Baltimore. That was cool. I was a kid. I was 12 years old. And, the players are more apt to chat with you and sign autographs. And it's their first year out in the new city, so they're trying to make an impression with the fan base. And so, I got a bunch of autographs, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm a Ravens fan now, just because the team from Cleveland moved to Baltimore. And so I'm a Ravens fan. They suck for like the first 4 or 5 years out there. And then a team comes back to Cleveland. Yeah. Well, I've got no emotional attachment to the city of Cleveland. So I'm not going to go back and root for the Browns like all the players that I followed out to Baltimore. I'm a Baltimore fan. And when Baltimore played in Chicago and when they played in St. Louis, we went to the games. And so I've kind of, kept that Baltimore fandom in a nice way to, the people, the local fans already don't like me because I'm not a fan of the Cubs. Might as well not like the Bears either. And just, be a total deviant about it. So,
are you a Bulls fan?
I don't have a team in the NBA. Like I never, I liked Jordan and the Bulls growing up.
You should have fell into Jordan. It's like the wheelhouse. You were there for perfect years.
Yep. And I would always watch the NBA and I was a fan, but I never watched it with that intense fandom that I always did baseball. Baseball and the Cardinals has always kind of been where my biggest passion has lied. So and then fantasy came around. So now like, that's what I care about in the NBA. Like I don't have an NBA team and the Bulls are dreadful. If the Bulls make the playoffs, I root for them. But so yeah, I'm not anti anybody, but I appreciate Jordan. I think LeBron is the most dominant athlete in the NBA. There's no question about it. But comparative to the skill level of the other players at that time, nobody touches the level that Michael Jordan was above the NBA at that point in time. And you're not going to realize that unless you live through those years. And yes, some of it's a testament to, the quality of the other athletes wasn't as great at that time, but some of it is also a testament to Michael's work ethic and what he put in and just how good he was comparatively with his training compared to the other players at that time. And I think that, the documentary series certainly showed that. And, I'm appreciative of having lived through those years.
I'm tempted to throw shade, but we'll move on.
What?
The documentary series that Michael Jordan produced.
Yeah, no, there is absolutely no doubt that docuseries was agenda driven based on,
ask Horace Grant about it. He's not
right. Yeah, Horace Grant is livid about that docuseries because basically it's his fault that Sam Smith got the dirt on the team and how bad of a person Jordan is, and he's come out and said some choice words after it. So I'm not going to defend that, but like teams beat Michael Jordan up when he was playing, and the dude would still play. He was playing 44 minutes a night and dropping 30 plus, and it was remarkable what those teams were able to accomplish. But I think Scottie Pippen maybe deserves a lot more recognition than he got in that documentary series. And yeah, he might be a little bit of a jerk, and you kind of got that vibe. But he was an integral part of those championship teams as well. And Jerry
Pippen's
Krause
contracts were wild, like the way the Bulls gave him nothing, and then like the Blazers gave him a ton of money, and he wasn't good. Well, either Houston or Portland, and he was traded to one of the other ones. Or it was just amazing the contract that he locked himself in on for years.
Sometimes it's lucky to be on those early, like what the Cardinals got out of Albert Pujols for a decade, and then he signs a however many $1 million contract with the Angels for his more watered down years. And hey, sometimes you get those rookie deals, man, and get a hometown discount, and that's how some teams are built.
Let's get some quick hitters. I don't want to keep you forever. I do have a bunch of things I wanted to ask you about still, but I don't want to keep you too long.
I couldn't believe it. I thought, I saw that you talked to Blender for like an hour and a half, and I'm like, holy cow, an hour and a half. There's no way Dean's going to be able to talk to, boring me for an hour.
We're almost there.
Well, yeah, I know. I'm somewhat proud of this. This is a trophy case moment for me.
And how much DFS have we talked?
A little, we talked about we started with the XFL.
NASCAR,
we've built up from there. So,
I wanted to talk about Draft Streets. Like I remember playing against you and seeing you on Draft Street. Like I remember seeing your name Like who? And like you would max enter. I think it was 3 entries. And I'm like, who's
yeah,
this
it was like
STL
3 entries. Draft Street was great, right? The Draft Street pricing will never be touched in DFS because Draft Street was like $100K cap, I think. But guys would have a salary of like $10,906. Everybody $10,242. And
the Jets defense, I think, was what's like $5 against New England or something like that. It was amazing.
And so, that the stud players would always be like 5 figures. And so there's two main things I remember about Draft Street that I'll be able to tell the stories of forever. A is you lost points in the NBA for missed field goals. So Carmelo Anthony was always ridiculously cheap because you'd get like negative 10 points a night from all the shots that he missed.
And free throws, 2 cards.
Yes, it was an interesting layer of strategy. And B, the first DFS controversy, one of the first ever DFS controversies, right? I just said all of the star players were always 5 figures.
Oh, Steph Curry.
There was a night where Steph Curry was $1,000. The algorithm completely missed Steph Curry. And there wasn't a whole lot of content in those days. Like DFS was still in the infancy. We had some content at RotoGrinders, right? Dan had the morning podcast and, you'd have maybe a article or two, but FanDuel was the big player at the time. And, a lot of times the content would be more focused on that. And you had to scroll down the list to see, like Steph Curry was $1,000 with all the other schlubs that were never getting into a game. And so if you didn't actively seek him out, like, oh, you're scrolling through the top price guys and, hey, where's Steph Curry? You might not miss him on a big slate. Well, Steph Curry's $1,000 and you could get all the studs in with him. And so I probably
the extra layer, by the way, cards. You remember the extra layer to this, the whole Steph Curry thing?
What's that?
The extra layer, he was questionable that night. He was hurt.
No, I didn't remember that part.
Yeah, he was questionable, and I didn't max enter Steph Curry in every lineup for that reason because I was a dope. But
and so of course he's $1,000 he plays, and everybody who didn't play him is hashtag mad online at the time, and it was this big DFS scandal which doesn't hold a candle to some of the things you've seen in the 7 or 8 years since. But Draft Street was great. I mean, I was one of the bigger players over there and had a lot of contact with the higher ups, and I miss it. I've got a T-shirt hanging around somewhere that probably doesn't fit anymore, but
same.
It was, it was a good time, and that was the ground floor for me. A banner ad for Draft Street that I happened to see back in 2011, and we're almost a decade later.
A couple more for you, cards. Some of your tweets. My wife has a weird tendency to hoard certain things when they are on sale. Our current toilet paper inventory is 122 rolls. This is March 12th. How many do you have today? Enough, I imagine.
Yes, probably less. All right. If it gets under 100, that's when she starts to panic. You got to have a 6 month. Yeah, we've got 2 kids, so it's goes a little bit faster off the rack, but it's very strange. Like she'll warn me like when coupons come out for things, like, and it's the laundry soap. That's probably the other thing I referenced in that tweet, and the toilet paper, and that's fine. I mean, we're never going to run out. And I know I
have one of those bunkers.
I always joke with
canned goods and such, or
when the kids are teenagers, I'm going to tell her to have the kids go in and get it. And so we'll probably get the police called or something because they think we're going to go out vandalizing the neighborhood. We're buying so much toilet paper, but I don't even know if that's a thing anymore. It's probably TP and is beyond the world these days, but it's probably in the 100 roll range. I would say I'll ask her for an update.
In Auburn, what's the tree in Auburn when they win the big game? They throw toilet paper on it, right?
That's right.
I can't think of the name of it for some reason.
I can't either. Ask Cheese.
Something corner, Turner's corner, Tumor's corner. I don't know. Okay, this is a little wordy. There's a lot here to unpack.
I'm a little wordy sometimes. Is this another tweet?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
My sociology paper from 2003.
Oh no. We don't have enough time in the podcast. All right, I'll let you tell the people the tweet.
After monitoring you tweeted it, so I figured
I tweeted, and I did this. I did this in college.
After monitoring restroom attendees for 4 hours, noted that 38% of urinal users did not wash hands and 12% of stall users did not wash hands. Were you just camped out in the bathroom for 4 hours?
I was.
How did you get these statistics?
So I was in a sociology class, which was very fascinating. And the teacher of this course was very unique in the fact that there wasn't much of a textbook in this class. It was all stuff to make you think and make you think about life and weird things that, weird habits that people might do. And so like my idea of fun or, that class was made me nervous because it's out of my wheelhouse, right? I'm an accountant, for God's sakes. And so, sociology stuff, it makes you a little queasy inside. But I didn't want to write a paper on like the State of the Union or, the whole premise of this paper that we had to do was defying social norms. That was the paper. And there was not a whole lot of boundaries that we had. It was, you had to defy a social norm of some kind and write a paper about it. And you could tell the people after the fact, if you wanted to, if you ended up, getting in hot water or whatever, you could, we had an instruction sheet from the class that, was a get out of jail free card if the police came up on you or something with whatever you're doing.
Why are you in the bathroom for the last? Yeah, I could see it being suspicious of something.
Yeah. So our dorm floor, I can't remember what it was now, or if there was maybe a lobby bathroom. But one of the handicap stalls had, like, a lot of stalls cut off the door at like to where you can see the person's feet.
Yeah, which is always so weird the way they
I did not want
in the doors.
My feet to be showing in a bathroom stall for 4 hours because somebody could come in multiple times and either think something's wrong, somebody's passed out in there. Like I didn't want to have that conversation with anybody. Like my whole goal was I wanted to get this dang paper over with and I just wanted to write it and be done. And my roommates and I were talking, like, I wonder how often people wash their hands when they go to the bathroom. And we had like some debate about this, at what level people wash their hands when they went to the bathroom. And I can't remember who was on what side.
Was that number surprising to you? In retrospect, 38% did not wash their hands, because we've all been, you're talking about being in the ballparks. You see a lot of dudes are in ballparks. They use the urinal. They just walk right out. Yep. And you're just like,
no, it does. It maybe did at the time. So anyway, we had a handicap stall that the door went all the way to the floor. So you couldn't tell that anybody was in there. And so my roommate and I put a out of order sign on. There was another handicap stall in the bathroom. We weren't keeping any handicapped person from using the bathroom. Good. It was like the best case scenario to do it without inconveniencing anybody and not being awkward for me. Obviously, it's awkward to tell people I sat in a bathroom for 4 hours. But there was enough traffic. It's a college dorm. We did it on a Friday or something, a time where I didn't have class. And so I put a desk chair in there. I was not sitting on the toilet. I had a desk, a little like portable desk with like a TV tray or something. I didn't haul a 30-pound desk down there.
Did you have like a Game Boy or something to keep you occupied?
Yeah, I don't know if I took any video games in there or a cell phone or what. I don't remember. Yeah. But so I had a chart that was, obviously you could tell when somebody's using the urinal. You can tell when somebody's using the sink. You can tell when somebody's using the stall. It's pretty obvious. So, I had a chart of urinal users that wash their hands, didn't wash their hands, and I tallied it up, and, there was 200 or 300 people that used it. And so then, right, we had to break the social norm and write a paper on it, and then we had to speak in front of the class about it, which I actually didn't mind that. I don't mind speaking, obviously. But everybody in the class thought that was pretty cool and also a little bit weird, but other people did weird stuff too. And I wish I could remember. I look back and think, boy, that teacher had a pretty good life, because she got to hear all the scoops on all these, different stories about breaking social norms. And it was a pretty entertaining class, even though it was out of my wheelhouse. And, it was pretty cool. And, my only other college memory was there was one day of college. Well, I guess I got plenty of memories, but There was one day at college where my schedule was bowling, and I took my other sociology elective was sports culture and society. So I had one day where those were my college classes. I had bowling at like 1:00, and then I had sports culture at like 2:00, and that was my like Thursday. So
It's funny how our stuff kind of overlaps because I took a bowling class in college and I was a minor in sociology. So I aced the bowling class. I don't know about yourself, but
I
nailed it.
I bowled a 190. My bowling average was probably like at the time maybe 150. I bowled in a league for a couple of years.
Solid.
I wasn't a superstar by any means, but my average was probably 150, 145, 150, and I bowled a 199 in the class one time. And I don't know. I think if you bowled a 200, you got a certificate from the place for like a free pizza.
Yeah.
And I had like a 191 on my last throw, and I got an 8, and there was a collective groan from my group that would have gotten the free pizza, but that's all I remember about that.
You lefty or righty? You got a hook?
Yeah, I'm a lefty. I don't throw a massive hook, but especially now I'm out of practice, but throw a lefty ball with a little bit of a bend.
Yeah, I'm a lefty as well too, Cards. Look at that.
All right.
Everything's kind of lining up. Couldn't really make the hook work though, unfortunately. I was hoping you'd be like in like a lab coat with like a pen and paper, just like standing by the sink. That was the way I envisioned that the whole time. It's still
then
fun.
Everybody's gonna wash their hands.
All right, Cards. This is the big one. This is what the people want to know. You ready for it?
Is that another tweet?
Leprechaun, Leprechaun 2, Leprechaun 3, Leprechaun 4 in space, Leprechaun in the hood, Leprechaun back to the hood, Leprechaun Origins, Leprechaun Returns. Can you power rank? Can you pick your favorite amongst the Leprechaun series?
Oh, the original is always the best. I have not watched these in a long time. I'd have to go back and watch them again. I can't imagine, I can't imagine that. I just looked up the original. Do you want
Jennifer Aniston's one of them?
Do you want to guess the rating of the original Leprechaun movie on Rotten Tomatoes?
You're talking about the critics rating, or you're talking about the audience rating?
Let's see. Let me.
Critics, I think, will be more rough in the single.
Yeah. Digits. So I've got the tomato meter here and the audience score.
Okay, I'm gonna say the actual tomato meter, which is the critics, is 7%.
Okay, we got 23.
Oh, okay. It's shockingly high.
Underselling it there, D.
Okay, and I'm going to say the audience is, based on that, I'm going to say the audience is 35.
Yeah, 32. So on 43,000 ratings, that's lots of people watching. And yeah, so looks like Jennifer Aniston was in the original.
Yeah, and I think Ice-T was in one of them too, or maybe two of them. I'm not really sure, but yeah, I don't know. It's just this running joke in my head. Where years ago, you referenced me watching Leprechaun.
Yes. Like my favorite like sports related series would be Major League. I watched all of those several times, and like Major League 1 and Major League 2 were great. And it's like, just like that series, Leprechaun, you start to get to 4 or 5 movies. Like, look, you're out of content.
Back to the Minors didn't do it.
Back to the Minors was abysmal. And, that's about the extent of my movie knowledge. It runs out in a hurry, especially now, given life and that, but,
favorite sports movies, Major League.
Yeah, for sure.
Favorite athlete all time?
Favorite what?
Athlete.
I mean, Pujols is it's got to be a Cardinal player, because and Pujols is obvious, but in terms of my appreciation compared to the rest of the fan base, it's probably Jim Edmonds, lefty. He's got that lefty swing, great outfielder, and played almost every day in and out, and I just really liked him as a member of the Cardinals, and obviously he was on a lot of their winning teams there in the early 2000s, and that was when I was 18, 20, 22 years old, and really watching them. And I've got an appreciation for those teams like in the 90s too, with Ray Lankford and Ron Gant and guys like that. But it almost has to be a Cardinal just because that's my team, and Edmonds is probably the guy that I would pick for that answer, and Pujols obviously.
Cards, I appreciate your time. I'm sure the audience here appreciate your time as well. Do you have any plugs? Tell the people where they can find you on the old Twitter machine, and I guess you'll have some content coming out at some point. And when is your NASCAR package coming out?
Well, the big deal here is we've got golf coming back June 11th, so we're less than a week away from golf. DraftKings has a Millie Maker lined up. There's huge GPPs. And that's one of my DFS wheelhouses, and super excited for golf to be back. So For the premium members, we'll have all the golf content covered here. We've got new stuff coming out for golf. There's going to be some big GPPs with golf getting back in the mix. So check that out here on the RG platform, Twitter at STLCardinals84. Super excited for that to be coming back. And yeah, for sports world to at least start to get back to normal. So happy to chat with you.
Much appreciated. That was Justin Van Zuiden, you know, as STL Cardinals 84. I was Dean. This was the Morning Grind. Thanks for listening. We're out of here.